What's up, witches? Ms. Witchcrafter here at your service, and welcome to the Crafty Cottage. Today we're going to be using some older dies and seeing how we can creatively come up with new ways to repurpose them. New supplies are great. Everyone knows that. But sometimes you don't have any new supplies. And so expanding what your expectations are of a certain die set or supply and repurposing it for something other than the theme or the season that it was intended for is an awesome way to make sure that your investment means something. So we're going to start with this Spellbinders set. It is called Eek-a-boo, and I believe it was from 2019. We're going to put together the three little trick-or-treaters that it was intended to make first, and then we will get into how we're going to reimagine it a little bit. So here I am putting together the first of three little trick-or-treaters, the ghost. I'm using almost every piece as it was originally intended. Little boots there, little striped tights, the sheet that goes over, you know, the child that's supposed to be under there. And you give it little arms and a little jack-o'-lantern treat pail. Now I'm only going to put this treat pail together one time. It's very simple. You just fill in from the back so that the eyes and the mouth have some color. And then it has these really cool little handles on it. They're split, so you put one on each side. Then you just attach that to the front and the back of the trick-or-treater's hand. And it looks like he's holding it. And it is just about the sweetest little thing. And that's the ghost I'll put together. The second one of the trick-or-treaters that comes already to go in the set is this little devil. He comes with a piece that cuts out hair. His whole suit comes as separate pieces to cut out. And then he has a very few actually little additional pieces that really make him look like a devil. But use the same arms, use the same feet. He has little horns there, as you can see. And these are all super useful pieces that can be turned into other things, as you'll see later on in the video. He also has a little curly tail and a spike to go along the end of the tail. Now, you've seen me a couple of times use this pad of Post-it notes, and I'm basically doing that to keep the liquid glue from being too messy. I find that if you put together some of the smaller pieces on top of just a pad of regular paper like that, you could use a notebook, you could use little Post-it notes like that. It'll just keep you from getting some of the excess glue all over your project. The third little trick-or-treater that comes in this Eek-a-boo set is the skeleton. Now, what I really love about the skeleton is that you could really make this exact same kid over and over again. And by just changing up some of the papers that you're using, or maybe using some mediums, you could make a glittery ghost, you could make a neon colored ghost, you could use some pastes and make him glow in the dark. There's a lot of possibilities with this set just using these three original characters by simply changing up the colors and the papers and the mediums that maybe you can use to treat the paper before you do the die cuts. He has a lot of really useful pieces. He has a rib cage right there. You'll see I have a really fun way to actually use the pelvis bone later on. And then he has some long and some short bones for his arms and legs. The bones are also a really cute way to decorate your project. You can use them in a little graveyard or whatever your scene is. They're just a really nice little extra thing that you cut out over and over and really help it to theme your card. These guys are the three original trick-or-treaters from the Eek-a-boo set. Oh, and I thought it would be cute if he had little bones sticking out of his treat pail, so I put those in there. But I have come up with 4 more for this particular video. Now, there are tons more you could do than just these 4, but these were the ones that really spoke to me. I will admit, I think this first one is probably my favorite. He is an alien. So I cut him all out. All of his skin color is green. And I took the hood of the little costume and I flipped it over upside down. Top tip, this is also a really great way to make him into an astronaut. So you could cut all of the outfit and the hood out in white. You could use the hair dye so that he would have little hair, and make it, if you're in the US, make it from NASA, so on and so forth. But I decided to cut all of his skin out in green, even his hands and his little boots, because I liked the idea of not knowing if he was just a little kid who had a really good alien costume, or if he was a little alien who was sort of going incognito because it was Halloween. Now here's one of the first ways that I use one of the other unrelated pieces really creatively. This set has a word die that says Eek-a-boo, the title of the product. And these are the centers of the letters from the little sentiment that cuts out from this die. Those little triangles are actually the little eyes that come out of the jack-o'-lantern when you cut him. So you get 2 of those every time you cut the jack-o'-lantern. And I made those into buttons. Then he's going to have some little green shoes or little green feet. You can use your imagination to decide which is which. Then I used another couple of those little offcuts for some buttons on his helmet. You can see I love that one a lot. The second little remix character that we're going to make is Frankenstein's monster. Now here's me showing you how I made his tattered shirt and his tattered pants using the edge of the die that cuts out the hair. So that is a good tip. If you want to make something out of the existing dies in the set or the existing parts of the supply that you're trying to reimagine, see how they can be combined together. I would never have been able to do that as cleanly without having the idea to use that die that cuts the hair in order to create those tatters. The second thing that I'm reusing or reimagining is the little handle that goes on the pail. I used as the rivets that are in Frankenstein's monster's neck. And I use the same hands and the same legs as we did on the other characters that utilize those, but I kind of pulled them down a little bit and made them longer. And insofar as I could, I made him a little taller because Frankenstein's monster is supposed to be big. And so you can also mess with the dimensions a little bit. Those tiny pieces are actually the stripes that go on to the tights that we used when we made the ghost. I'm using them on this character as his patches. And later on, we'll put some more details on those so they're more obvious as to what they are. But they're perfect for size-wise and for what I was looking for. And I really love just how these came out looking, to me at least, a lot like they were very much intended to be this exact thing. So Frankie will get a little pail also. And then we'll move on to our third reimagined character. Now this one, I will admit, is the one that's kind of the farthest afield. Number one, I wanted to see if I could alter the hair a little bit. And maybe make a kid who had longer hair. And so this is one of the 2 ways that I figured out that you could use that hair piece over again. And this little trick-or-treater now looks like she kind of has low ponytails on each side, or little pigtails. which I thought was a great way to kind of repurpose and reimagine one of the pieces of this. Now, this is the part that's a little bit out there. I wondered what it would be like if we used the pail, the little jack-o'-lantern, as a mask, and if the costume itself was actually a jack-o'-lantern, which is why she has green hair. The small stem of the pumpkin, which is actually called a peduncle, I have recently learned. A weird extra little factoid for you, but the top of a pumpkin, the stem of a pumpkin, is called a peduncle. And then I cut out her arms in orange and her little boots in orange. I thought it would be fun to basically imagine that she had like orange gloves and orange shoe covers and a bunch of stuff that had come with her mask. And then I put that is actually the piece that's supposed to be the long legs that we used on the ghost and we used on Frankenstein. So I put it down the middle and made her look like she had kind of a zipper on her costume. And then I wanted to show this being put together one more time, just to show you that you don't have to do all one color in the back to put on the eyes and the mouth of the jack-o'-lantern. You could make it multicolored if you wanted to. And then we attach her little trick-or-treat pail and she is done. Oh, I did actually add one more thing. That is the tail that goes to the devil, which I am using here as though she kind of has little vines coming out of her pail. I thought that was so cute. Now, last but definitely not least, probably my second favorite of the reimagined characters is this little lady. And she is going to be a superhero. Now, in order to make the extra pieces of the costume, I just cut the body of the costume twice, and I cut off the little contrasting pieces for the arms and legs. This is actually one of the O's, the letter O's, that is in Boo from the sentiment die that comes in the set. This is the only thing that did not come from a die cut, which was just a little silver star that I pulled out so that she would sort of look like a pastel pink and purple Captain America. And then her cape is actually the piece that you use to make the body of the ghost, which worked out so amazingly. I'm cutting that off because you can see it, and it doesn't make any visual sense when the head is attached to the body. So I cut that off, and then here is where we reimagine where the hair is going to go. I wanted her to kind of have a ponytail, and so I tried it a couple of different ways. I tried to kind of give her, like a higher hair on the top to see if I could make it be a ponytail, but it ended up working out the best to just have me give her kind of a side pony that flips up, which once her head is attached, it looks super, super cute. I also found these to be incredibly sturdy. Every incarnation that I made of them, I used liquid glue. I did stabilize this one with a little scrap piece of paper just because I had only really glued her hair to the body. Then she has some little silver boots and a couple of pieces. I really did find that the leg pieces and the stripes for the tights were super useful pieces out of this set. Here I am using the little stripes again for the zipper details going down her costume in the front. And then I'm going to take that longer piece, which is actually one of the legs, and I'll cut it in half, and I'm going to use it to make her costume have a belt. So she's just really coming together. Obviously, you could make this in different colors and actually make it look like Captain America, or whatever is your favorite, Marvel or DC superhero of choice. Not put the hair on it, which would imply that it was either a child with short hair or make it be a boy. Here is my favorite reimagining of a piece. That mask is the pelvis from the skeleton. And I was in love with that idea when I figured out that I could just have a mask for her without having to do anything crazy. It was already a piece in the set. Here, I'm just putting some extra little highlights and things on some of the pieces. I used metallic paper on some of them, and some of them were looking a little flat to me. And since the majority of these are going to go on the same project, I wanted them to all have some of that dimension that is sort of automatically given when you use specialty papers and things like that. Also, the little pail, the jack-o'-lantern treat pail, in real life, the ones of those that I have seen mostly have kind of been made of that plastic blow mold material. And I wanted them to look a little bit more 3D, like they were plastic and the light was kind of bouncing off of all of them. Apologies that some of this went a little out of the top of the screen. I was deep into embellishing at this moment and wasn't paying attention. And now we're going to move on to the second die set. Now, this die set is a Sizzix die set that I'm actually pairing with two other dies from other manufacturers. Actually, three. There's scrapbook.com, there is another Spellbinders die, and there's actually a Photoplay die. That Slimline with the arch at the top is a Photoplay die. That's my next tip. Go ahead and just see if you have dies in your stash that go together, even if they weren't made by the same company. It's always fun to have a whole collection of things that just go together and makes it really, really easy. And sometimes you just don't have that. And so I found three completely unrelated supplies that really, really went seamlessly together, basically. So this card die is interesting. You essentially fold a piece of paper in half and you cut the whole thing one time with the folded piece of paper. And then when you unfold it, you have the entire card base, which is a quad fold card that makes a front door that opens in the middle. And then when it opens up, you can see the inside of the house. Here I'm just showing you as an example how to cut and score and fold to make the basic version of this card. As you can see, there is sort of when this opens, you'll be able to see it. It's sort of an odd opening in the middle of the back of this card. That's because there is an additional little plate die. You'll see me put it right here that you use, and it slips right in there, but we're not going to use that. I'm going to do something different. So I remade this in some more sturdy cardstock, and then we're going to use that piece that I just used as an example, and we're going to cut off the two front panels of that, actually more than one time. This is the very, very front layer. As you can see, I'm making sure that I don't have too much, just trimming off a little bit right there. And that is because there is an additional part of this die that cuts a lot of detail into the front door. And I want to be able to layer some things behind that. So I am cutting additional pieces, and then you will see here how I am going to go about putting those essentially window frame dies into these layers. And I just used the card die as a little guide so that everything was basically on these very evenly spaced and straight. And what you eventually get is those four pieces that build the front of the door, which you'll see a lot more of later. So here I'm adding some texture to these pieces for the front of the door. And this acetate piece is actually going to be our window panes, which I love how they come out. So here's my next tip. I know there's been a lot of things on the market lately for stenciling, for inking, that help with keeping your materials from moving around while you're inking them or while you're stenciling them. And I think those products are amazing. I I want those products, but I don't have any. And I didn't have any when I was making this. And so what I did have was a couple of gel plates where you pull monoprints from and do other effects on art effects on paper. I find that this, for now, works pretty well for me. It kept my pieces in place. It was forgiving. It was easy to clean. So when a new product comes on the market, I'm not telling you to not want it. I definitely want pretty much every new product that comes on the market. But sometimes to make sure that you'll use that thing, you can use something that's similar to it that's already in your stash. And if you continue to use that, maybe then the new product that's out on the market is a great way to expand and is something that you would use. But you might find that you use the thing you have once or twice and you never go back to it. So buying that brand new thing would have been a waste for you in particular. Here I am just adding some smokiness to those acetate panels. And yes, I have 2 gel plates. Yes, I am using 2 gel plates. My recommendation is if you want to try using a gel plate and you don't already have one, they're a really, really great investment because they basically give you a ton of different background techniques and things that you can achieve that you can't really achieve the same way with most other supplies. And the 8.5 by 11 or the 8 by 10, maybe this is, size is great for card makers if you want to use one of these as I have, which is to stabilize my paper for inking and stenciling and things like that, because pretty much every size of card will fit on here as I am demonstrating. So this is the place where I will admit this simple card kind of goes a little off the rails and becomes, I would call it a project card, meaning it's not something I can send through the mail. It's not incredibly flat. It is not incredibly conventional when compared to other cards, because I'm going to combine that quad fold card and this Slimline panel to essentially achieve all the things that I wanted to achieve. So here I am inking up my background with some Distress Oxide inks, and I want to make the moon up there look like it's going to glow, which is why I use that light pink color. And then I want a spooky Halloween sort of bluish purple sky with a little bit of black shadow around the outside. This inking technique I just 100% stole from Kelly Taylor. If you watch her videos, she does one pass from light to dark ink when she's doing a background like this, and then she does it in reverse from dark to light all over again. And I have tried it and I highly recommend it. It makes everything come out really, really well blended, well saturated. She's totally right. So this moon stencil is from Spellbinders. It is also a little bit of an older supply. And my idea for this moon actually came from, here's a very Kelly Taylor thing. Here's story time. When I was little, one night, my mom had to get me up out of bed and we had to get in the car because my dad was working late and his car had broken down. And so she had to go and pick him up, and I was little enough and there was really no one at that time of night who could come and watch me. And so when on our way there was in the sky at night, and it was around Halloween time, it was a very large orange moon in the sky. And my mom didn't want me to be scared, and I think she didn't want herself to be scared in some ways. And so she told me the story about the littlest witch going to this witch school, and she had to basically prove during a test at her school that she had practiced all of her magic well enough. And the festival during which this test happened was called the Festival of the Pumpkin Moon. And I asked her over the years after that night to retell me this story several times. And when I became an adult, she eventually just broke down and said, I don't remember the story. You were little. It was late at night. I had to drive a long way, and I just was trying to make it so that you weren't scared. And so I just saw the moon in the sky, and I started making up this story. And she's like, I have tried to remember this over and over again your whole life because you've asked me to tell it so many times, and I just cannot remember. And so when I was making this and I had to choose the color of the moon, it hit me that this would be my opportunity, one of maybe many, to remake that little bit of just a memory I have of my childhood that really stuck with me for some reason. So I'm using this stencil, this cloud stencil I love. It's a Slimline cloud stencil from Picket Fence Studio. And this dark cloud technique is definitely a trust the process moment. I doubted myself a little bit when I first started it. Thought maybe I should have used a lighter ink and done more white clouds. But once I'm completely finished with the background, I am really happy with it. I'm so happy with it, actually. I made a second panel, and a little later on in the video, we will use that second panel to complete the look of the whole card. But I wanted to add some splashes, to some splatter to the background in different ways, because my idea for this was, you know how when people have like orbs on pictures and ghost hunters say that those are like ghosts or spirits showing up. I thought it would be so cool if the entire sky background of this Halloween night was a bunch of spirit orbs in the sky. And so I just filled it up with all of those sparkly. The sparkle is actually mica stain from Tim Holtz, which is actually one of the only pretty, somewhat new supplies I'm using in this card. Okay, so we're down to assembly at this point for the most part. My idea for this was that I wanted the inside of the home to look like it was lit up and glowing. And so when I inked that, I tried to make it look like there was just this glowing light, kind of a orangey yellow light coming from inside, which to me looked inviting, but also a little spooky, like cute spooky. And then the overall feeling that I want for the card is that it is sort of this haunted outside, but then a party on the inside. So here I am just cutting down those acetate panels so that I will have the panes for my window. And I'm doing this sort of piecemeal because I want the different parts of that embossing to really specifically be, where I want it to go. I wanted the bottom part to sort of have that image to be off center, and then the top, I wanted that the middle of that spider web to really be in the middle of that sunburst door. And so I just cut it down and kind of kept cutting it down until it fit where I wanted it to fit. That's a good thing to remember. You don't have to do it exactly the right way the first time. You can just kind of cut and keep cutting as long as you test in between and you make sure that you're not, cutting off something that you need. Your process does not have to be perfect. My process is never perfect. I always make mistakes. In fact, there is a big mistake that I made that I actually left some of it in here that I will explain in just a few minutes. So I am attaching that with liquid glue. It is non-porous. Acetate is non-porous, meaning that it doesn't absorb liquid. And so you do sort of have to put it on there and put a little weight on it until it grabs hold, which is why I'm not just sticking it and letting it go. I'm kind of holding it down. Um, and that is for pretty much any non-porous medium that you use. You do have to put a little weight on it and really let that adhesive have just a bit of drying time. It's not a huge amount, but it's not just a stick and go either. So my little door is finally coming together, and I cut it down just a tiny bit too much up there at the top. So I'm going to take this black marker and I'm just going to color over those. You don't even notice it at all when I'm done with the card. And it absolutely does not bother me, just to sort of go over my mistake with a Sharpie and be done with it. So this I cut with that Photoplay arch die, which actually is a Slimline die, but I just cut the amount of it that I needed. And my concept for the inside of this was I sort of wanted it to be like the wallpaper in the Haunted Mansion. I know that's purple, but I didn't want it to be an exact replica of that, but the idea was that it had this ornate pumpkin colored wallpaper, and it's this haunted house with this dark kind of spooky wood details all the way around. Actually, that window die is the Spellbinders window die, and I think that this Sizzix card and the Photoplay arch die and this arched window from Spellbinders fits perfectly, like they were meant to go together. That's what I mean by you don't have to rely on having an entire collection of something. You don't, if you can do that and you want to do that and you can, go for it. I mean, I'm not yucking anybody's yum at all. But if you're trying to use some older supplies and you didn't get the entire collection of something, look through the collection of things that you have, and you will be so surprised with how much you can find things that will just pretty easily go together. Now here's where I'm using the other panel that I made of that night sky, and that is because I wanted this to look like it was the night sky was visible through that window. And you'll see when the card is finished that sort of seamlessness between looking out the window at this and the background, the longer background that I made, it really packs a punch. It really makes an impact on the card as a whole. Now, if you have this die that makes the inside of the house and the quad fold front door die, and you would like it to lay flat when it is closed, don't do what I did. It's very thin, but I did use dimensional adhesive to pop some of these elements up. I popped up these two trick-or-treaters that I'm adding right here. I popped up the window, and I will admit, it doesn't impede the card from closing, but it does make it so that the card does not lay flat when it is closed. It does tend to be a little bit more open. And I do fix that for the look of the outside of the card so that I can close it and it will look closed as I need it to be. But if you intend to send this card through the mail, use flat adhesive. If you intend to put this in an envelope, use flat adhesive. That is my recommendation. So the other thing I wanted this to look like it was a party. And so I needed some party decorations. Now, I have about, I would say, minimum 4 to 5 dies that do different sizes of bats. They don't all look exactly the same, but they're all basically bat silhouettes. So at the beginning of Halloween crafting season, I just cut a bunch of them up, mostly in black, some in orange. And all I'm doing is taking a little scrap piece of paper there, and I am drawing a line so that these look like Halloween decorations that are hanging from the ceiling. And then I put a little decoration right in the middle of that, the top of that arch window. Now there's me showing you that it does close, but it does not really stay flat and closed. So it's time to decorate the outside of our haunted mansion. And this die, I believe, was based on the pictures on the front of it, was originally intended to be a Christmas die. There's a wreath on the front. It's a very Christmassy sort of color palette that they use on the front of the packaging. And I just really wanted all the pieces to still be usable, but I just wanted it to be Halloween. So I cut it in purple, and I cut the little bow that comes with it in orange, and I used some of my tiniest little bats and stars just to make myself a wreath that looks like it was made for Halloween instead of being made for the more traditional wreath holidays like fall and Christmas. But you could leave this off. You could put something else there. You could put your sentiment there if you wanted to. But I really wanted the wreath. I was in love with that wreath idea. Okay, so here's where this really develops into a card project, a hand delivering type of card project, and not just your run-of-the-mill card. If you wanted to stop where I just stopped while I was putting together that quadfold house and door die, you could. Please stop if that's where you want to stop. I just had this idea in my head that I wanted this card to have both the outside and the inside. All right. Here is not only my solution to keeping the card closed when I want it to be closed, but also the entrance of the biggest mistake that I made while I was putting this together. I cut this little circle with a die or a punch, or I honestly don't remember. And these are the handles that actually come with the die, the door die. And I decided that I was going to make a clasp for the front of the door so that the card would stay closed, using this little circle to make it look like there was kind of a frame around the handles of the door, which is a great idea, and it did end up working. But I just didn't 100% think it all the way through when I was attaching this Velcro to it. And I made a mistake, and then I fixed it. So here is a good tip. If you want to use Velcro on something but you don't want it to be white, you can use alcohol markers and color the softer side of the Velcro and have that side be the side that's visible, and you will basically be able to make it pretty much, if you have alcohol markers or some kind of marker that dries fairly quickly, you can have that Velcro be whatever color you want or need it to be. Now, here is me fixing my issue. I should have only put half of the front and the back of the Velcro onto that piece and onto the card. And then I should have done originally what I'm doing now, which is putting some kind of permanent adhesive on the other half. Because that other half doesn't ever need to come off. Only the half with the Velcro needs it to come off. And there I have fixed it. But I did have to peel it off and cut that other half off. So we are coming basically to the end of the assembly. I took these other two trick-or-treaters and have attached them to the front. So they're our welcome wagon for the party. And then we open it up and all of our friends are at the party. I just am so incredibly happy with the way that this came out. I'm not going to lie, it took this card took a long time. It was a project card. And I'm also not going to lie and say I'm going to give this to anybody because I'm going to keep it. And sorry, not sorry. So one of my favorite motifs actually for Halloween is bats. I like bats, and I do like bugs and things for more than just Halloween, but for Halloween, probably my favorite motif is bats. So I definitely wanted bats to be flying across our sky and across our moon. So I added them there, and that's just, again, from my reserve of all of the bat. I just cut a bunch of bats. It's up in the right-hand corner. You can't see it, but I just have a little dish, and that's full of bats for different things that I used through this season of crafting. I used some strong adhesive, and I attached that front door to that back panel. Now, I will admit, I had originally made that Slimline panel and attached it to a Slimline card that opened. It ended up just being too many things that could open. It was awkward. And so I put some adhesive on that and just made that Slimline card into a panel that was attached to the back of the door. One of our final touches is going to be the sentiment. This is the sentiment that comes in the die set with the trick-or-treaters. That's also the title of the die set. And here you can kind of see where I got some of the extra pieces that I used, just like that big O right there. That's what I used for the chest of that little girl, Captain America, down there. And here's my sort of last PSA to you. If you don't have a sentiment, go onto your computer and type it out and print it. Get a piece of paper and write it. This is a handmade card, and if there is handwriting in your handmade card, no matter what you think of your handwriting, I promise you the person who gets this card will not care, because you have made something amazing for them, and your handwriting is absolutely good enough. So here is the end. This is the completed card. And here are some pictures of the finished card. Thank you so much for anybody who made it this far. I know this was a long video, but I hope that it inspired you to go and shop your own stash. You used to love every single one of those things. You were incredibly excited to get every single one of the things that you currently have. And I hope today showed you that there are definitely ways for you to love those things and be as excited about them again as you were when you first got them. As you can see, there is a little bonus. I didn't use Frankenstein's monster on this card because I really felt like he needed a bride. And when I thought of using the ghost, the sheet of the ghost for Frankenstein's bride's hair, I just had to do it. So I will post more about this card and all of my other Halloween makes later on in October. And just remember, the magic is not in stuff. The magic is in you. Trust me, I'm a witch. Bibbidi bobbidi bye.